Turkey military power against Israel 2025. Turkey and Israel are facing off due to the increasing military presence and political power struggle in Syria. Why is Israel concerned about Turkey establishing bases in Syria and shaping the new administration? How is Syria becoming the scene of a new power struggle between two regional actors? While Turkey's attention is occupied with domestic politics, a series of steps taken by Israel in Syria have become a subject of discussion. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who ordered airstrikes on points where Turkey was allegedly preparing to establish bases, was not satisfied with this and went to Washington to complain about Turkey, The Economist magazine emphasizes. In its article evaluating the developments, that this sudden and tense escalation raises important questions about regional dynamics and the future of Turkey-Israel relations. Here are some of the highlights from the article. Turkish military officials have been touring some air bases in Syria in recent weeks and were making plans to equip some of these bases with air defense systems and armed drones. It was claimed that preparations were underway for Turkey to take control of the T4 airbase near Palmyra. However, Israel attacked late on April 2nd. Israeli aircraft bombed the T4 runway and radar systems. They also hit at least two other bases and other military points in Syria. Israel was concerned about Turkey's activities in Syria, and these concerns were openly voiced by Israeli officials. Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar said that Syria was in danger of falling under Turkish influence. Defense Minister Israel Katz warned that Syrian leaders would pay a heavy price if they allowed elements hostile to Israel to enter Syria and endanger Israel's security interests. Mutual Concerns. Israel is concerned about the extent of Turkey's involvement in Syria, particularly its establishment of military bases and the supply of weapons to the new Syrian army. Turkey, on the other hand, is concerned that Israel wants Syria to be destabilized or torn apart. Both sides accuse the other of preparing for war by indirect means. Israel appears determined to keep Syria weak and divided. Repeated Israeli attacks on the infrastructure of Syria's former regime army have destroyed most of the Bashar al-Assad regime's old Soviet-made aircraft. Israel has eliminated any military capability that it sees as a potential threat to its security interests, says Alper Kokan, a former Turkish diplomat now at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has also called for the demilitarization of the south of Syria, citing the rights of Syria's Druze minority. Israeli officials distrust Syria's interim president, Ahmed al-Shara, whom Katz describes as a jihadist terrorist with links to al-Qaeda. Mr. Shara has vowed to prevent his country from becoming a hub for foreign radicals, as it was under the Assads. But Israeli officials are concerned that Syria's new leader, backed by President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, a longtime Hamas supporter, could soon embrace the group. Disagreement over Syria's governance. Israel and Turkey are also at odds over Syria's future governance. Israeli officials have openly proposed a federal model for Syria in which different minorities, including the Kurds and Alawites, would enjoy broad autonomy. They argue that the recent massacre of hundreds of Alawite civilians by armed groups loyal to Syria's new rulers proves that Shara cannot be trusted. Shara and his Turkish allies had a completely different system in mind, a strong central government led by a president with broad executive powers. On March 13th, Shara signed a new constitution based on just such a model. Days earlier, the Syrian Democratic Forces SDF, which is largely Kurdish and responsible for much of northeastern Syria, agreed to join the interim government. Turkey's view on Israeli-Kurdish relations and concerns about the Pekerdogan has accused Israel of provoking Syria's ethnic and religious minorities to destabilize a country emerging from one of the deadliest wars of this century. But what worries him most is the relationship between Israel and the Kurds. Turkey suspects that Israel is using the SDF to weaken Turkey's influence in Syria and to fuel separatism within Turkey. Turkey sees the group as a cover for the PKK, which Turkey and most Western countries have listed as terrorists. Israel has not fully addressed these concerns. Last year, Shara referred to the SDF and the Kurds as his country's natural allies and called on the outside world to protect them from Turkey. It is not clear whether Israel will provide arms to the Kurds in northeastern Syria. But many Israelis may want to support the Kurds in retaliation for Erdogan's support for Hamas. Turkey certainly takes the risk seriously. Fears of an alliance between Israel and the Kurds were a key factor in Turkey's decision last year to hold secret talks with the imprisoned PKK leader Abdullah Öcalan. Those talks bore fruit in March, with the PKK declaring a temporary ceasefire. According to Daring Khalifa of the International Crisis Group, a Brussels-based think tank, Turkey does not want a PKK state on its border with Israel. Israelis also worrying that Turkey could use Syria against them. Is Israel's approach to the Kurds retaliatory? Relations between Turkey and Israel, already toxic over the war in Gaza, could worsen further. But a real armed conflict between NATO's second-largest army and America's main ally in the region is unlikely. Neither side has any intention of fighting the other. Turkey and Israel are setting the stage for deterrence, not war. Erdogan sees Donald Trump as an old friend and sees an improvement in Turkey's relations with the United States under his presidency, including lifting the ban on the sale of F-35 stealth fighter jets. Erdogan also hopes to improve relations with Europe, which has sought his security guarantees and help in keeping the peace in Ukraine. Mr. Erdogan is unlikely to jeopardize all of this by going to war with Israel. Moreover, Turkey and Israel can find common ground in the Eastern Mediterranean. Both want to prevent Iran from re-establishing a foothold in Syria. Failure to establish a new order in Syria would have dire consequences for both countries. Syria is a big country in deep crisis, and Mr. Erdogan will not have time to challenge Israel, an Israeli intelligence source said. If he can stabilize what could become a chaotic jihadist state, that would be good for Israel, too.